Hello. Thank you for coming in Capitale du Libre, MiniDebConf Toulouse. As an exception, this talk will not be recorded on the video, but it will be recorded on the audio. So you can show your face. It's fine. We won't see it. Well, people outside won't see them. And it will be recorded, and that's fine. Maybe there will be some discussions. Okay. Welcome to EDA with Quadrature du Net, blah, blah, blah stuff, April stuff, lots of activism in France. And she's currently working on Debian, actually.
Yes, I'm doing a PhD research on sustainability of Debian.
Okay, thank you.
Not only Debian, but...
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. So the idea of this talk is to have a discussion together. So you will see it's not so well prepared because the idea is to discuss together about my research work on sustainability of Debian. So I'm I'm doing my PhD at Université Lyon 1 in a team which is called Limites Numériques because we work on the environmental limits of our planet. But in digital stuff. And I'm a computer scientist. I used to do a lot of developing in C and C++. I do not do it a lot anymore. I'm a free software digital rights advocate. I'm a member of La Quadrature du Net, kind of the digital rights organization here in France. And April, which is the organization that promotes and defends free software. I'm a Debian user since my first year in university. It's 2000. And so I'm a big fan of Debian as a user. This does not mean that I know a lot of technical stuff, but I use it. And I also have people install Debian in logs, Linux user groups. For example, in Marseille, we have one every month. And since January of 2023, I'm doing a PhD research on digital obsolescence. And it's not only about Debian. So I kind of had two field studies. So the first one was Android OS, and the second one now that begins now, it's Debian. So the idea of my PhD is to understand obsolescence factors in OS ecosystems. I have an ecological perspective, and it's not only technical, it's also a lot of science and technology studies. So it can be social study, a social study of the ecosystem, it can be economical study of ecosystem. I'm not a specialist of this because I'm more of a technician, but I try to have a perspective of science and technology studies. So, for example, in Android OS smartphones, I try to detangle the role of technical issues in obsolescence, industry-related factors, marketing incentive factors that make obsolescence, from purely technical factors. And by studying now in the second half of my thesis, by studying Debian, I want to study how alternative systems, such as Debian, deal with maintenance and durability issues. So, just some words on what I did in my first half of the thesis on Android OS systems. It has not been published yet, it's in course of writing. So I did a mapping of the ecosystem of Android OS with all the different actors like the Linux kernel, the Google, firmware SOC, manufacturers, etc. And I saw that there are different code layers and divergent interests in all this ecosystem. So I saw the Android fragmentation that we all know about, which is the fact that we have one OS built per device, with many device models out there in the market and many OS versions on these device models, with most of the devices being on older -2 version, Android versions system, more than 50% of the devices on Android OS all the time are on versions older than 2 years ago. And with one of the main problems being the Franken kernels that come from the SOC manufacturers most of the time, that are never updated once they are put on the market. So we have a lack of updates of the smartphones, a lack of customization by users, and we did some workshops where we saw all kinds of user problems that finally yield to the fact that they change their smartphones if they cannot do some other technical stuff on them. And also I saw that there's a lot of marketing about that pushes to a renewal, I call it obsolescence marketing, with renewal incentives in the name of innovation. We have a lot of this language in technical stuff, so innovation is important, and with no will to maintain software or repair hardware. So this is the mainstream Android OS. And then I had, in parallel, a study of Android alternative mobile OS, like Mobian, in Debian. And I did a mapping of different alternatives, some which are Android-based, like Lineage OS, for example, or Lineage OS for Micro-G, and some others that are not, like, for example, Mobian, that are directly based on Linux. And I saw how proprietary code, like firmware drivers, impact maintenance work and development work of these alternatives. And but also I saw that with little money and small teams, but a lot of effort, and this kind of efforts like reverse engineering, tinkering, hacking, we could do some alternatives, some OSs that gives us the possibility to use, like, for example, 10 years old smartphones, even if it's not on all devices. And then I saw how some small enterprises, like for example Fairphone or Common here in France, they use these alternative communities that make alternative OSs. For example, they have in their teams people from Postmarket OS and people from Lineage OS that help them maintain. I think they have now 7 years of OS maintenance on every new Fairphone that comes on the market. And this was with the team at Fairphone, it was with a team of 7 people. So with 7 people, we can do 7 years of maintenance. I mean, it's not only 7 people because it's all the work from Lineage and from other communities, open source communities. So this is what I'm trying to, what I saw in Android OS and on mobile OSs. And now it's the second part of my PhD, and here is more like of a discussion, which is on Debian. So I chose Debian to see how we can make something different, more sustainable, an OS that is more sustainable. So my guess is that Debian is sustainable as a socio-technical system, and that the community is making a lot of effort to keep it this way. I think I'm biased because I really love Debian, so I'm trying to find reasons. So, for example, I see that Debian is maybe, just tell me if I'm wrong, the OS that supports the largest number of architectures today. Do you think it's true? Yeah? Okay. If there's a discussion about it, I would be happy to hear it. The OS from which the largest numbers of distributions, Linux distributions, are derived, like we have this tree of immense distributions. Maybe I'm wrong, but okay, a lot of distributions derive from Debian. Okay, so more than 30 years old now. I think we had the 30 years party last year. Yes. Yeah. So what else do you have other ideas why you think it's like we can say that it's sustainable in a broad aspect before diving into technical or a particular stuff? So if you want to say stuff here, it's okay.
Mike, raise your hand if you want the mic.
Yeah.
I'm going. Gagat?
Thanks. From my personal experience, it also helps when some laptops are getting really slow. I have a relative in my family, that the laptop's getting really slow with Windows updates. And one solution I propose them is just to install Debian. And then the thing was so snappy, the person was thinking I did something strange to the laptop, but it was just snappy because it was just plain Debian. So I see Debian also as a replacement for all laptops. I think it's one of the ways Debian is installed is to give a second life to use laptops and desktops.
I think it's true. In the lags where we do install parties, we call it like this way in France, we can see a lot of old laptops that come and computers that come and they're really slow, and then we put Debian or some other Linux-based, Debian-based distribution like Ubuntu, for example, and it gets better.
Ubuntu is better than Debian? That's what you said?
No. I never said this. But I don't think. Actually, I did not measure this.
Just a quick comment in terms of supported architectures. I think NetBSD is the one OS with the most ports, active ports. I think if it has a computer in it, it runs NetBSD. I think that's their tagline.
To go back on the architectures, I think we had a recent debate on the mailing list that people were very angry because we removed E396 installer support, but those are for like 15, 20 years old computers, so there's a limit to which architecture we can maintain before it's too much of a burden. So there is some waste here maybe. And another question I had is, I don't know if we still support ARMHF. It's a question for the audience.
So there's a constant problem in Debian with not having people to support the weirder architectures. It really needs contribution to the kernel, or the kernel needs to support it, and then it needs someone to stay on top of toolchain issues. And on most of the architectures that aren't AMD64 or ARM64, that doesn't really happen, and lots of builds fail and people get grumpy. So it's kind of limping along, but there's a big pressure to reduce the number of architectures and make things more maintainable.
About ARMHF, so it looks like ARMEL will be released one more time, so that the time T transition is in a stable release, and ARMHF will probably stay around for a while if nothing breaks in the coming years. So there's not really a talk of that going away, as far as I know right now.
So we still have some 32 bits somewhere in the archive, because my feeling was like we're all migrating to 64 bits and there's no more 32 bit, but we still have ARMHF at least.
Yes, and as long as people are
using it, porting it.
Yeah, and the main issue with i386 is that nobody's working on keeping the kernel alive, the 32-bit kernel. It's been a while now that you can only run i386 with the 64-bit kernel if you want to run recent Debian, and so you need 64-bit hardware anyway.
It is getting harder and harder to support 32-bit platforms in general. The bigger packages don't compile within a 32-bit memory space, and so desktop systems on 32-bit are going to get problematic in the near future.
So you wanted some discussion, you had it.
And also I was wondering at some point how important is Debian in the internet ecosystem, like how many servers run on Debian or...
Lots.
I guess lots, but do you have feedback or statistics about it? Have you ever met something?
I think they are on the internet, like some people were probably saying Debian is the most used or something OS for servers. To be checked, but I think there are some numbers on the internet. I don't know how they run the study. Maybe they ask 1,000 people, but I think you should be able to find some numbers somewhere if they're not too dated.
And also what I saw is that it's maybe one of the OSs that is mostly used on supercalculators and research bizarre computers. No. Yes?
So Sorry, I will take first. So from working in HPC, it seems that in HPC it's mostly Red Hat, from my experience, rather than Debian, because some reasons, I don't know why. Maybe there's more support for HPC packages or this kind of stuff. But since Red Hat did this stuff, some people are starting to migrate away from the Red Hat ecosystem to the Debian ecosystem, even in HPC. So to be seen, maybe.
Okay. You wanted to say something?
I think this is not a really shiny one, but I learned that we have, well, in this last 30 years, we have gathered old code, which is not maintained upstream anymore, so Debian somehow becomes upstream and keeps the old code, which has now no homepage anymore, which has no source anymore. We try to keep it up and running, which is quite some effort, but for several packages we are doing it, and maybe users are happy also about this, that they can use this old code. In scientific field it's somehow important, but I spotted a lot of other things. It's not the shiny thing because we wanted to have the latest one, but from a point of sustainability I think this is a point.
So I can go on. So I've been in some mini-debconfs until now. So I've been in Cambridge 1 year ago, in Berlin. It was a very nice one. So what I saw from what I heard from you and from the gathering is that there is something interesting to analyze in the life of a package, of a Debian package. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just like interested in seeing how a package is, how it's living its life from its beginning to its death sometimes when we have unmaintained packages or that are looking for new maintainers. So I wanted to see a little bit how this works. So I'm calling it the life cycle of a package. And also what I saw was some, I would like to focus on 2 or 3 different kind of packages, for example, but to have specific packages to see, because it's better to have one specific package than to talk in general. So for example, I would like to have an example of a new package that is coming into Debian, so how the work begins and what is important to deal with at the beginning. How long will it take? What are the difficulties to package this new stuff? For example, in Debian MiniDebConf Berlin, there was some work on putting organic maps on Debian. So it was kind of the beginning of this new package life in Debian, and it was interesting to see what was needed and how Debian maintainers were talking to upstream developers of this package and how this social interaction went on. Also, at some point, we tried to see if we could we could maintain again the anarchy package, which was which I think was not maintained anymore. And we discussed on the problems. It was like a HTML package somewhere upstream, and we saw what the problems were to maintain it again. So this is interesting to me. So if you have interest in talking to me, because how I work is that I do interviews. It's not more than 1 hour long, generally. We do not have to do it here now. We can just talk and discuss here. And later we can do an interview by video conference, or if you live in Marseille, where I live, we can meet also. And if you have a package in mind and you're working on it and you have something nice to tell me about the life of the package and how it's been changing during the years because you know it, because you were on this package for a long time, then it would be very interesting to me. So I have the impression that we have maintained packages, unmaintained packages, waiting for new maintainers, abandoned packages, and I have the impression that there are important system packages that we need to maintain, and other less important ones that we can abandon if there's nobody that maintains them. So maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't know if you want to discuss this. it's also some work that I have to do, like some ethnography of package life that I didn't do a lot until now. But
I would like to make some advertising for the Bug of the Day initiative, because I have the feeling it's like we have a lot of things in a cellar of the house, and then we go with the torchlight and are checking, there's something interesting nobody cares about, there's something we can throw away, and something like this. And I found a lot of packages which are somehow waiting for someone who cares, and a couple of them are the maintainers are scared that someone else wants to do it, but this is very few, but most of them are very happy about this. And I really need to admit, Debian is famous for its quality, but when you dive into these dark edges of the cellar, I'm wondering why, because this is not good quality, and we need way more people who care for these old packages, or we need to aggressively remove these packages, because snapshots.debian.org is exploding because of maybe we have a lot of stuff we do not really need, but some users are happy about this. But I'm not really sure what to do, because salvaging the package is sometimes easier than discussing over and over if you can remove it or not.
Okay.
So sometimes fixing some bugs is easier and uploading than discussing why we don't need it.
Thank you. Maybe Helmut wants to add something about removal? Maybe not now?
Yeah, having many packages and few maintenance hours definitely is a sustainability problem, and I happen to look into reducing that problem by identifying some packages which happen to not be part of a stable release and having accumulated RC bugs. In doing that work and removing 100 packages, I've mostly received positive feedback. And by removing 100 RC buggy packages, it's also having removed 150 RC bugs. Do note that the vast majority of our 2,600 at present, it's falling, RC bugs and unstable, do not apply to testing. So the auto remover is actually doing its work. Consider removing the broken packages that have already been removed from Trixie, also from unstable, because that will make QA people a bit happier.
So
Thank you.
I would be glad to talk to you, Helmut. Yeah, sorry. Something else,
yeah. So I've been maintaining some Python packages, and for example, one I reported that it was completely not working over a year ago, and finally got removed this week. Okay. And I thought like, okay, finally this thing is gone. And while I was updating one package, then the new version broke another package, which broke another package, which broke another package. So I had to fix all of them in a chain. And the last one that got broken by my update had the popularity contest said it had one user. Which of course it could mean that there are 2 million people installing it and wanting privacy. Like you never know. But for me it was like, am I wasting my time to fix this thing? Would it be easier to just remove it if no one cares? Yeah. So I don't know a good solution here, because okay, if it doesn't work and clearly doesn't work, I think it should be removed aggressively. But if it's like a burden, it's very hard to decide, because you don't know if you're causing problems for someone or potentially thousands of people or no one.
Yes, because Debian is also about diversity and inclusion, so maybe we do not want to do packages only for, I don't know.
I'm always not sure if popcorn is a good measurement how important the package might be, because we are only measuring for people who agree two popcorns who send popcorn data, and there can be good reasons not to agree, and maybe we exclude a huge group of people who have good reasons not to agree, and then, yeah, it's always kind of common sense. And regarding popcorn, I also to check at the popcorn vote, not the popcorn. The installed package is probably by a broken dependency, so everybody has installed it, but nobody's really using it. We had 500 installations, but 0 popcorn vote. So check this for making some decisions about this.
I think I heard the question of when is a package becoming a burden to Debian. That's something that has been discussed on the Debian Devil mailing list a couple of months ago, with varying opinions. And my personal opinion to this is that the presence of RC bugs is a really good indicator. If a package has no users but no bugs, then I don't mind keeping it in there. It's not causing problems. Otherwise, someone would have filed a bug, probably. If it is RC buggy and has not been answered for a month, then maybe consider removing it.
There was a comment on IRC about popcorn, and it's a measure of how many packages, like how many users have the package installed, but not a measure of how important the package is to them, which is a very different thing.
One comment on your response is if a package has really no users, it will also have no RC bugs. And I mean, it's possible for failing to build. But with regards to doesn't start, or if you have it installed, you have a critical security vulnerability in your system, you will not get that kind of bug.
Quite a number of QA teams, including Holger's reproducible builds and lots of other things, do test these packages for some properties. And if they are not failing any of them, then they are not practically causing that many problems to development.
Helmut, in reply to your statement that if it doesn't have RC bugs, it's probably not a burden to Debian, there are a bunch of people who go around fixing RC bugs, and in many cases they're spending their time fixing them on a package that nobody's ever going to use. Then the RC bug count goes back down to 0, and that was probably wasted time in a lot of cases.
Thank you for removal.
Yeah, instead of fixing an RC bug, file a removal bug.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. And also, I had this experience a couple of times already that reintroducing a package which was in Debian already is usually quite easy. So if you find a new use case, just re-upload it. So I'm also for removing it faster.
Don't be shy.
Helmut's got a bot that'll make removal happen. Don't you? Someone was talking about... I forget, I thought it was you.
Ida?
Yes. How many time we have left?
I think 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So what I saw also, what I think it's maybe important in package maintenance is the social relations. I talked to you about the relations with upstream developers. So I saw a lot of discussion between you, but before you put a package in Debian, I guess you have to convince the package developer, if it's outside of Debian, of the importance of making your work more easy. Is it true or not? No? Because if he complies with some Debian rules, maybe the work on maintaining the package is easier.
So I think we don't have to ask for permission. What we usually do is patch the code to make it fit into Debian, and then propose the improvements to upstream so they can integrate it, and we don't have to port them over time, and also other people like Red Hat can profit. So usually we don't ask for permission, but we ask for merging Yeah, we ask for forgiveness. We ask for them to merge the patches that we propose that will make our life easier, but also the life of other packagers easier. So there's no pre-need to ask for permission to package. You can package if it's open source. There's no limitation.
And sometimes when you do that, the reply from the upstream is, "Oh, please, can we not have it in Debian? Then I'll have to support old versions, and I don't want to do that." And sometimes we do it anyway, and sometimes we listen to the upstream.
So really, because I thought that because Debian is important and known, developers are happy to see that you're putting their code in Debian. No. And I will. It's okay. I want to hear you, but just to say that is the fact that we live in an epoch with a lot of systems of packaging, like pip for Python, Composer, Docker, stuff like this. Does this make it that new developers they just don't understand the importance of having Debian-based? You see this? Because they say, okay, we don't need Debian, we have a Docker in it.
I would see that. Like most people say, mostly, if you look at READMEs, the number of people telling you how to install with Docker, I think, is way high than the number of people who say how to install on Debian. Mostly because Debian doesn't have everything. So I would say, yes, people use Docker to deploy or use pip or use Composer, but they really don't care about distribution because that's now how they work. They don't use it like this, in my opinion. Like, for example, PHP, it's very rare from some company to use PHP and to install packages on the system instead of using Composer. Same for Python, having a company using apt install Python something. In a company that does Python, I think is really rare. People will use virtualenv, people will use PyPy for the packages. But using the Debian packages, I think they don't see the point. So I can hear them when they say, "Oh no, I have to support this version for longer or something."
But do you agree that there is a point?
In what? Sorry.
In having it in Debian packages, it would be very
better for us. There is mostly
or
because of dependencies or stuff like that.
Yes.
So we want the tool, but the tool depends on something.
Yes.
So the upstream of the dependencies, they really don't care, but us, we care because we need the final tool. So we would need all of the dependencies to arrive into Debian. But these upstreams, they really don't care. They're just authoring a library and say, use PyPy, don't use Debian, in my opinion.
So when it comes to packaging stuff and interacting with upstream, there is a real difference between people having an extended experience with distros and those who are just developing stuff and only care about the fact that their stuff is deployed. People having interacted with distros are really more easier to talk to when you come with having, let's say, their testing suite, which is properly tuned to work also in distros, because some people are doing time-based testing. It works really nice in a container, but when you are using build-D or reproducible builds, you depend on VMs, which can be heavily loaded, so the time-based test is not really consistent. And when you ask them, if they don't really care, they will tell you, hey, it's not useful to run your test on Debian because we already did it on GitHub. And we already use it on GitHub, and you're like, I really don't care about your test output on GitHub. What matters is what I have on my platform. Also, there's another kind of unhappy developer. It's the one who gives, load some images on their README from their website. So it's a privacy breach. And so when you make your package in Debian, you tend to remove all these links because you don't want people opening the documentation in their browser to actually load external party stuff without being aware of it. And generally, when they see that you patch their code to remove their leaks from their site, they are quite unhappy and they don't want to help you anymore. So, sometimes you don't want to submit your patches upstream because they won't like it.
Okay.
But in general, I think interaction is nice. When you try to discuss with people and you explain your problem extensively enough for them to understand your situation, they are helpful. Sometimes I met some, some people unwilling to cooperate and try to find a proper balance. And in that case, I maintain my patches on my own, and whatever happens, it's sad because sometimes it's useful for upstream, but it's their project. They should be entitled to do what they want to.
Yeah.
One thing we sometimes see is an unhappiness from Debian has a reputation for patching things. I don't know exactly where this came from, but it exists. And some upstreams are like, oh, if my software is on Debian, you're going to do all sorts of horrible things to it, and it'll still have my name on it, and I don't want that.
Okay. Also, I wanted to see if there are some organizational stuff that you do that help you work, better work. Like, for example, I was listening to Holger and reproducible builds, and I was thinking, okay, how is this helping the development work to find bugs more easier, and how is this important for you to help you maintain packages? Salsa, I mean, when I first put Debian on my computer, I think it was something like Mantis and for bugs, and something like, I don't know where the code was, but it was not, Salsa was not there, so maybe this also helped. So what do you think helped a lot the work?
Two things, for me at least. Salsa was really useful. It was easier to use for getting contributions to my packages from external people. And also working teams is really, really good because you learn a lot. And even if I create the package and don't care anymore, someone in the team will go update this package because they need the update or something. And it's really liberating to know that you're not the only one to own the package, but that a whole team owns the package, and everyone is responsible for this package until it is in the team. So I think it helps a lot instead of having packages you have only for yourself. In my
and
experience.
You always had working teams, no?
Yeah, I started with team. I started with teams, so the teams made me learn a lot into the packaging, and then I started to package my own packages because they don't fit into a team, but I'm trying to put my package as much as I can in a team, so I'm not the only person to own the package, at least.
So when I arrived in the project, there was, I think, only Linchen and ci.debian.net. Reproducibles was already there, but I was not really into it at the beginning. And all these tools are really useful. Linchen sometimes help me to catch some stuff I would have missed. So the example of the privacy breach with links to external parties is something Linchen catches every time almost, and it's really useful. ci.debian.net is the place where you run auto-package test stuff, and you are able to see if your package is actually working consistently in terms of tests. It's what actually made me discover auto-package test and run it every time I build packages. Reproducible builds is it's really useful because sometimes we see that any tiny thing that you don't think that matters as a developer has an impact on the fact that you think your package is not reproducible and it can induce some issue. It really clearly gives some hints about where to dive to understand what's happening. And I think in my packaging activities, it helps me to avoid, I would say, something like 3 out of 4 times some bugs that are clearly avoidable. And the rest is me inspecting code or actually pushing something which is buggy and getting a bug report. So clearly these tools are really useful. They avoid a lot of free uploads that could be avoided by just automating stuff.
Thank you. And the last slide, I think I have no time left.
Wow.
The last slide is about the role of the LTS team, which I know is gathering here. So I have to interview some people from you. I know you're working, so I don't want to disturb, but it can be, like I said, after. We can have a video interview of maximum 1 hour. So just I will come to see you and see how you work and who is willing to do an interview with me later. And so how is LTS helping in maintaining for a longer time packages? And also I wanted to see, I'm very sad because I'm not going to do my PhD research during the release period. I'm really, really sad about it. But yeah, I wanted to know what is the role of the release period and how is it boosting your work here. So, but I will talk with the release team if people are there.
Does someone want to talk about LTS? Thank you.
So it was the last slide.
Santiago?
So maybe, do you have specific questions about the LTS? So I'm happy to talk.
I will do an interview. I wanted to know how it's working, how it's being... I guess I know a little bit, but I wanted you to say it to me, so how...
We
Yeah,
have, since time's up, we have a very nice presentation tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I know.
And I think
there.
it fits very well into the subject.
Okay, yeah, good. And are there people from the release team? Okay. So this was the last slide. Thanks a lot for all your help. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.